Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is July 13th, 2016. The upper house elections have concluded, and the prime minister has won a magnificent landslide and a mandate to move the LDP forward. Michael, what do you think of this election?
I think you've been drinking again.
No, I haven't been drinking.
Where did you get that?
Nothing. Are we on film? Are we in film?
Yeah, we're doing this right now.
Okay. A magnificent landslide. He has a mandate to move the country forward.
It's not a landslide.
Why do all the press reports say he won by a landslide when he didn't, in fact, win by a landslide?
Well, first we have to define what a landslide would be. A landslide would be something like he got enough seats to have a government that's made entirely of LDP. He didn't get that. Mm-hmm. They got very close. They missed it by one. Okay, a landslide would be the Komeito and the LDP getting enough seats to have two-thirds majority in the House of
between the two of them.
Just between the two of them. That's a landslide. No, this is not a landslide. This is a barely getting to where you want to be and actually getting a little bit short.
Right.
And everybody got short of what their dreams were. But everybody could walk away from this particular election and say, well, we did pretty well. Mm-hmm. And that's really an amazing outcome when you think about it, because we were expecting some kind of really conflicted ending, and instead we're walking away with pretty much the status quo.
So that means that probably Abenomics will continue forward in some shape or fashion?
Mm-hmm. And we're going to see a cabinet reshuffle. It's not entirely clear whether any of the big players, aside from Finance Minister Aso, who looks like he's really on the way out, other players look like they're pretty solid. And Mr. Abe has got to make some switches in order to keep the peace within the LDP, mm-hmm. which is now sort of feeling its oats. It's got past the House of Councilors votes. It wants to have some good times spread around the party, but otherwise, we're basically where we were mm-hmm. before the election, and we can't expect there to be anything except the focus that was happening on the economy.
Before we get into the dynamics of why the election turned out this way, everybody's talking about two-thirds and the revision of the Constitution and the boogie bear that's sleeping under the bed, Article 9.
Well, it's of course something that any journalist wants to have, which is a revolutionary change that he or she can describe. And I sympathize with that.
People have been writing for that for a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, but the thing is, it hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. The LDP, the first thing that you see a lot of is just flat out untruth, which is the coalition won a two-thirds majority. No, they did not.
Mm-hmm. The revisionists.
Yes. Then the revisionists won a two-thirds majority. They didn't either, because you really can no longer talk about the Komeito as being a revisionist party. Yes, they're not against it, but they're certainly not for it. Mm-hmm. And in their manifesto, they do not mention revision. When one of the major news agencies managed to get all of the candidates for all of the seats to offer their views, not one of the Komeito candidates said that he or she was in favor of constitutional revision. It's just not there for them as a party. So as to say that there is now a mandate or that there's some kind of possibility, yes, mathematically, if you add in a few extra independents, if you can believe that really the LDP can work with Osaka Ishin, mm-hmm. I don't know. Osaka Ishin is now a party of LDP retreads and hotheads from the Osaka region. You don't know where you are with those people. Not that they won't be able to be on the board, but what they're interested in is devolution of power. Mm-hmm. They want power moved away from Tokyo, and so that Osaka, the second city, can have a role as a second capital, basically. That's what they're interested in. And it has nothing to do with the Article 9 that is the major focus of the LDP. It's in the founding documents of the mm-hmm. LDP that we're going to do constitutional revision. And they're not talking about, when they talk about constitutional revision, it's only about Article 9.
That's right. There are plenty of articles that
they could higher
on the chart.
They could put other things on there, but nobody cares about that. And nothing is worth the effort.
Mm-hmm. currently, the election right now is the status quo for at least the next 3 years, because even if he calls a snap election for the lower house, no matter how well the LDP does there, it doesn't affect the two-thirds majority that they lack in the upper house.
Well, there's also the major issue that the DP, the Democratic Party, held its ground. This four-way alliance structure that they put together, this marriage of convenience with three other parties, actually worked.
Right.
We had, what really changed things was that everybody was counting on their being less than 50% of the electorate showing up at the polls.
And people showed up.
And people showed up.
It was a beautiful day. That helps elections.
Well, usually you'd think that people would just disappear, but we seem to have had, I think a major change is the number of people who vote early now is growing by leaps and bounds, particularly in the outer prefectures. We're seeing a lot of early voting done by people, and that must be kicking up total numbers, because when it was all on one day, you couldn't fit it into your day or something. You were out at the beach and the car broke down and whatever. But now you have a decent span of time to deliver your votes, and more people used this early voting procedure than ever before. In some places, they had over 50% growth in the number of people. It's really catching on, and that might be bumping up numbers. When you start bumping up numbers, however, and the LDP knows this, for every, let's say 3 extra voters that show up at the polls, 2 of those 3 are going to vote for opposition candidates. Only one of those 3 will vote for the LDP. The LDP knows that. So when we had a jump up to 54% in terms of turnout, everybody was saying it's going to be 48, 49. It's going to be
we thought so too.
It's going to be risable. Those extra votes really counted, and there were about 5 districts where the DPJ candidate just squeaked it through and just got over the totals of the LDP candidate. If it was 52% turnout, 51% turnout, those seats would have gone to the LDP.
So let's talk about that wrinkle of the 18 and 19-year-olds having a vote this year.
That's right. This is the first national election where 18 and 19-year-olds got the vote, and they turned out in numbers that pretty much surprised everyone, because 20 to 29-year-olds, only about a third of them show up at the polls usually. So their voting rates are about 32, 33%. And people said, well, there's a novelty factor, it'll be a first time, it'll be a little bit higher. But it was significantly higher. And it shows that if people are inculcated with an idea that this is a civic duty, and that's easy to do when, at least the 18-year-olds, they're high school students.
Still living at home, probably.
Still living at home. And they have all these adult figures who are there to encourage them to vote. They did go out and vote in pretty good numbers. Still less than the national average, so their net contribution was negative.
And the numbers are small.
The numbers are small, but still, we had 45%. But that 45 is really split in an interesting way. 18-year-olds, high school students still, they showed up at more than 50%. 51% of them showed up to vote. But 1 year older, ones who are starting college or not living at home or don't have teachers and parents hovering over them.
Right.
Less than 40%.
Makes a little bit of sense.
It makes sense, but they immediately, once they turn 19, they start acting like their immediate peers in the 20 to 29 age bracket.
One of the other interesting aspects of this election was that the younger the people are, the younger the voters are, it seems the higher the percentage of LDP votes or coalition votes were generated. And as people get older, they vote less and less for the LDP, certainly, but the coalition.
That goes entirely counter to what people think about conservatism or the way that senior citizens vote.
Right.
Senior citizens were the least supportive of this government and this conservative government, and the youngest voters were the most supportive. The 18-year, 19-year-olds were second highest, but the 20 to 25-year-olds were the biggest supporters of the status quo in terms of the government. They for both the Komeito and the LDP together. It seems as though the longer you've been around the LDP, the less support you have for
Yeah,
it.
the more you're with us, the better you like us.
No, it's quite the opposite. And that's really quite astonishing, because you would think that at least maybe from 60 years of age on, people would be much more conservative, and also they would vote for the LDP candidate out of a sense of, if not obligation, or at least a sense that you know this person.
Right.
But that was not the case.
Sure.
As they're getting older, they're more adventurous politically.
Maybe this has something to do with the tremendous landslide the LDP had in Tohoku region.
Oh, the Tohoku was completely lost. That was a great thing. You know what I'd love to do? I mean, I'm teaching a course right now in Japanese history, and I didn't do it for today's lecture. I want to get a map of the losers at Sekigahara
Right.
in 1600, and put that next to a map of the two sides that fought in the Meiji Restoration, and then put up the map of Sunday's results. I'm sure they're going to be identical. That we're still fighting the battles of 400 years ago. It seems almost guaranteed.
Don't you think TPP had a large role in that?
Sure it did, but there's just always been an East-West separation. And Mr. Abe, even though he's basically raised entirely in Tokyo, is a man of the West. He's a man of Choshu, of present-day Yamaguchi Prefecture. That's his district. And they are the ones who overthrew the Tokugawa Bakufu and took over in the Meiji period. And the people in the Tohoku fought on the other side.
Yes.
They lost Fukushima.
They lost Fukushima and a minister of state.
And a minister, a sitting minister, lost his seat in Fukushima. Well, who was Fukushima on the side in the Meiji Restoration? It was on the Tokugawa Bakufu side. So for me, it's like seeing it through time. I'm having a ball. But yeah, the DP and its allies, their strategy of turning around and changing their opinion on the TPP. I mean, that looked really opportunistic and really, really sleazy, but they won 2 seats in Hokkaido and they won the Tohoku.
Right. So for the alliance partners, that's the opposition parties who have coalesced into some sort of an alliance.
It's an alliance of convenience. They say we don't share ideas, but we certainly share one single idea, and that is we want to defeat the LDP in any way we can.
And what they did in the single-seat districts were they joined forces and they supported one candidate.
Yeah, and they won 11 seats in a single-seat district, which nobody saw coming. They were sure that they were going to be in the single digits.
Right.
Everybody thought that was going to happen. But they eked out 5 tough victories and got into the double digits, which really makes it, it should be telling Mr. Abe, be careful about...
No, this is something new, isn't it?
Yeah, be careful about the House of Reps. It's not a done deal anymore. And you can really sacrifice something important, which is that 2/3 majority that they've got in the House of Reps.
They didn't do as well in the proportional representation, though.
When you're talking about the DP?
Yes.
But the DP picked up seats and vastly improved its position. That's basically because the phony alternative that used to exist, which was Watanabe Yoshimi's Your Party. I mean, Watanabe himself got back into he got, but as one of these retreads that is hanging on to the Osaka Ishin vote. I mean, what does he have to do with Osaka? Nothing. He's Tochigi all the way through.
Right.
But he figured out how to get back into the diet, and now he has a job for 6 years.
But they used a different strategy for the single-seat districts as opposed to the proportional representations districts.
Well, the multiple member districts, there are more than one seat. There's more than one seat available, and sure, you could have joint candidates battling it out, but the LDP and the Komeito don't put out joint candidates in that. There's an LDP candidate or 2 LDP candidates, and the Komeito.
It's a free-for-all, actually. It's a popularity contest. Who's going to be on top?
Yeah, and you can sometimes even freak candidates like Yamamoto Taro can get through because all you have to do is put together. You don't have to be number 1. You have to be number 2, but number 3 or number 4,
right.
and those totals are doable for an independent candidate, and that's where the independents slide in this House of Councilors election. There was some talk of trying to build a united front, maybe in the multi-member districts, but my understanding is that didn't last long. You heard something different?
No, I heard that there was a lot of controversy inside the DP about how we're going to represent this alliance within the proportional representation lists.
Ah, well, the proportional representation list, I mean, it requires that there be some kind of party list. Only parties can run in the proportional. And the parties still exist. Well, we don't know about the socialists now because they lost one of the two persons. I mean, they lost the party leader. He did not get reelected. Mizuho Fukushima, the old party leader, managed to survive. It's going to be a party, and it's not going to be a diet party, but it's going to be a party. But what a fall for them. They have finally gone extinct. Other parties went extinct in this one as well. The Renaissance Party did not win any seats and goes into oblivion.
So you'll find a couple of loaning diet members.
There will be some diet members without a party, and maybe that will be added to the LDP's totals. But it's not going to be in the House of Councilors. It's going to be in the House of Reps where they don't need the help. The election was good for everybody.
Except for the people that lost.
Well, yes, but the LDP got a lot of seats, but not enough to disturb the coalition that it has with the Komeito. We talked a lot about that. I talked about that since January, that it seems certain, given the voting patterns, that by default, the LDP Komeito coalition would come under stress. As it was, if they had 57 seats, they would have had a situation where the LDP could make up a government by itself. They won only 56.
Right.
They just missed that crucial goal. Well, it wasn't really a goal. It's actually something they didn't want because it would have caused an immediate call within the LDP. Well, let's get rid of coalitions.
Right.
But now that's not possible. That went away. The Komeito, they gained seats. They now have a solid group in the House of Councilors, and they're happy. They have leverage. They have the ability to say to the LDP, we gained 5 seats. You gained 5 seats. We gained 5 seats. Everything's fine. The DP, which got absolutely slaughtered last time and fell to 17 seats in the previous iteration, they got 31. They finished way ahead of everyone's expectations. And party leader, I was sure party leader Okada was going to announce his resignation at 10 o'clock at night, but they won in Mie Prefecture, his home prefecture.
Squeaky victory there.
And he did. They lost better than they thought, which is an achievement in the modern Japanese political world. So it's not a landslide by any means, but it's good for the country. It's good for the parties. And we'll just go until whether it's Abe's term in office or whether it's the term of the House of Reps, whatever the next frontier is, that's going to be a while, and we will be discussing other things in terms of politics, not electoral politics.
Let's talk just a little bit about Kanagawa, what happened in Kanagawa, and how that might influence a cabinet reshuffle.
Oh, well, it depends on what you want to talk about. For me, the fact that Mihara Junko won 1 million votes scares the bewillikers out of me because from my having read the things that she's said and done over the past few years, she's really an extremist. And an extremist who believes all kinds of pre-1945 things that one should not believe after 1945. And that she was by far and away the most popular vote getter in Kanagawa, overrides anything else. What do you got out of it?
I'm talking about the kerfuffle between Mr. Suga and Mr. Aso.
Yeah.
And the separate candidates that they supported.
Well, okay. Mr. Suga is from Kanagawa, and he has to be part of of somebody's support group. I don't see it as really important because what was really important for that prefecture was that it elected two LDP candidates, and it did. And the differences between the two camps are all forgotten because both candidates got over the limit. It's a multi-member district, and two LDPers were elected. Let bygones be bygones is my thought.
Okay, sticking with the theme of a landslide, let's talk just a tiny bit about Okinawa.
Yeah, whoosh. Out they go. The last place that there were LDP members is gone. And it was a sitting cabinet member. True, not the most impressive of individuals. And she was taken on by one of Okinawa's very most impressive members, Mr. Iha. On a person-to-person race, Shimojiri versus Iha, it was going to be Iha. But we know that this is fraught with much more because of the bad relationship that Okinawa has with the central government right now.
We want to show you, right?
Yeah, and they did. And now Okinawa is in, I mean, of course, emotionally, they're in a great spot. They have thrown the LDP out of their prefecture. But of course, now they have no one as their advocate in Tokyo. It's a double-edged sword. But certainly, will an LDP member win in Okinawa Prefecture anytime soon? The governorship is gone. All the House of Rep seats, the House of Councilors seat. And the thing is, how is this going to affect the U.S.-Japan relationship? The U.S. really does expect that eventually the central government will build the base at Henoko as the replacement for the Futenma. But that's looking farther and farther and farther away now.
She was minister. Among the portfolios that she had as minister was the development of Okinawa.
Yes, and you would think that she would be able to put out large S and say, that bridge,
yes,
I got that bridge for us. This freeway off-ramp, I got this freeway off-ramp. Wasn't enough.
It wasn't a huge defeat. I mean, it was a close race. She lost by about 5 or 6 percentage points.
Yeah, it's huge in this case.
But it was a tough fight.
It's a tough fight, and she's a cabinet minister.
And
she supposedly has the ability to affect the central government in ways that are positive for Okinawa. Well, that is gone, and now Okinawa is going to be screaming and yelling and kicking, and it's going to make all of that relationship between the central government and Okinawa all the more difficult.
To lose one minister in an election is not great. To lose 2 ministers in one election is pretty much an embarrassment.
Yeah, and those 2 ministers, however, are not going to be missed. They're
still ministers, even though they might not be members of the Diet. They might have to give up their pins, but they're still members of the cabinet.
The timing of that is so close that the cabinet reshuffle
slated for August 3rd?
August 1 or August 2 or August 3. The end of the term for this particular House of Councilors is the 27th of July. That little bit of time is not going to really affect anything. The reshuffle will come immediately afterward, and they'll be private citizens and out the door. It's not going to be a big deal, I don't think.
Before we wrap up this episode, Michael, let's talk about the mandate and what this gives the Prime Minister to do moving forward and what pronouncements he's made since Monday.
That's what frightens me a great deal. And it has nothing to do with constitutional revision. Constitutional revision was not mentioned in the Prime Minister's post-election press conference, his victory speech, as they call it. What instead he talked about was fiscal stimulus, 10 trillion yen of projects. And you know this is just a terribly large cookie jar, and that every member of the LDP is going to get his or her arm up to their elbows in this thing. And of course, that's not to mention the boondoggle.
Yes, the boondoggle. Let's talk about that, Maglev.
See what it does to me when you say that word? Oh, don't do that.
That's huge.
It's enormous. And for anyone who doesn't know the background, it's the pet empire-building project of the former chairman of JR Central, Kasai Yoshiyuki, who is Mr. Moneybags for Abe. He's the one who arranged the various groups that funded and supported within the corporate world Abe's return to power. And Kasai is his background man. Mr. Kasai is no longer in the management of JR Central and therefore not directly involved with this project. Nevertheless, whenever you just have to look at the photographs at any kind of press conference.
He can still dabble in politics.
You can see him. He's there.
Right.
And this is a shout out to the person who put him into power. And that kind of crony capitalism just causes me to cringe. That this project itself is unnecessary, an absolute energy sucker, and is going to last well beyond Mr. Abe's term. And let's say it, he's promised to not just to make sure that it gets funded, but to accelerate the development of this, basically a subway tunnel from Shinagawa all the way to Nagoya. It's underground as much as the Marunouchi-sen is here in Tokyo. Okay, it's a giant set of tunnels for this maglev technology that, let's face it, has been a bust everywhere else in the world. That this is now on the front burner again. I don't know. It's just yes, it's infrastructure. Yes, it's spending. We need that kind of thing, but not this project.
How much does that really trickle down to the people who actually need it, though?
Well, who's going to use this thing? You gain what, an hour in terms of travel time to Nagoya. What are you going to do with that hour? What was that hour really worth it? You know, and the population of Japan is going down. The number of working people is going down. The number of nuclear power plants is going to be going down.
Well, maybe in the interim, Nagoya will become cool.
But the thing...
Maybe not.
No, it is cool. It's right next to Toyota City, and the entire magnificent ecosystem of companies that live off of the Toyota keiretsu that's there. It's wonderful. Yeah, but there's no reason to get an extra hour and to spend all that money in construction. And then the calculations are something on the order of that for each passenger, the amount of energy that would be required to operate the maglev is 3 times what is used for a Shinkansen. You know, that means power plants will have to be built, energy supplies will have to be secured just to run this thing that gets you just to there an hour earlier. No, not in a time when you do things in the virtual world, when you use email, where you use Skype. You don't have to go to Nagoya at high speeds.
Right. Well, it's interesting. The fellow who won in Fukushima, his platform was, I'm going to close all of the nuclear plants in this prefecture.
And nuclear plants,
and he won.
And nuclear plants was also significant in Kagoshima, where we have now a person who in charge there who says that the nuclear power plant that was just restarted is going to be shut down. Now we're going to have a real fight. I think we begin the real fight between renewables and nuclear power in Japan. And the results of this election are not in favor of the nuclear crowd.
I'm only going to say this because I like to see you cringe, but the Prime Minister ordered Minister Ishihara to promote and produce an economic reform plan.
I don't mind that so much. I mean, the two of them have very different visions. I mean, we know that Ishihara has put out all kinds of books and all kinds of analyses talking about Japan's debt and how that's a very big problem. He now has to be, as economic financial minister, he has to go back on his own personal program and in his own personal history. But you know that in the back of his mind, he's saying to himself, none of this is going to work. And when you have it in the back of your mind, you're not going to be a great salesman for it, I don't think.
The last time the Prime Minister shuffled the cabinet, almost 50% were new cabinet ministers. He's coming up on a new opportunity in early August to shuffle the cabinet again.
And there'll be lots of speculation about who goes in, who goes out. Again.
But don't you think a lot of seats will change this time?
Yeah, Mr. Suga is now past the long
Historical.
He's the longest serving chief cabinet secretary. It's a tough job, very, very, very wearying, hard to do. Maybe he's had enough. We don't know. If so, who's going to run the government? Because that's what the chief cabinet secretary
Who's going to be that glue?
That's right. Who's good enough to be there? That's a really tough question, because even today, the LDP is really a shadow of what it was in the 70s and 80s. It sloughed off a lot of pieces. In the, Ichiro Ozawa and his people left, and
Koizumi
and all these things. They're a lot of the talent has gone, and it's the diehards and the true believers who are left, so that you don't have really that really wide pool of talent from which to choose people. I mean, Mr. Suga has been extraordinary, but where's another Suga? I can't see one.
Yeah, I don't know. People always say that, who's going to be the next prime minister? But when people assume that position, almost invariably they surprise people. Mr. Suga was not expected to be anybody dynamic, and look at what he's done.
All right, I'll accept that criticism, and we'll see what happens. But we will see a cabinet reshuffle. It will be big. There will be a few of the big names will go down. Whether Kishida, the foreign minister, stays in or stays out, I mean, he's seen as a possible replacement for Abe.
A lot of talk there.
And in order to really be eligible for the contest for that position, you have to go and cool it outside for a while. At least traditionally. Then again, Mr. Abe may be changing everything and may want to pick a person from within the cabinet to be the successor. I'm not sure.
We've talked this one almost to death. There's still plenty to discuss. Please stay tuned. We're going to be examining this and reporting to you next week.